Okay, can you hear me now? Hi, everyone. I'm a little bit loud, right?
No, it's good.
Good? Okay, good. All right. Welcome, everybody. Hi. So my friend joined us here tonight. So everybody welcome my friend Ali.
Hi, Ali.
It's been about 5-6 years or so since we've seen each other. So yeah, I probably wouldn't have recognized you if I didn't know you were coming. So welcome, everyone. And tonight we have this talk, Coming Home. I was trying to find a clever title so that you didn't really know what I was going to talk about. If I had said I'm going to come here tonight and talk about the Prodigal Son, probably people would be like, oh, that story again. But I said, let's talk about coming home. That's kind of what it's about, is this homecoming. I'm getting a little bit of feedback. I don't think Luigi can hear me now, though. Get a little feedback. If you turn the big blue knob down a little bit, then I think it'll help. Maybe now it's a little too quiet, but I don't know. We got to find the sweet spot. So, welcome everyone. So we're here to talk about the Prodigal Son coming home. And so I got the idea to talk about this. Actually, I gave a talk about 3 years ago, almost exactly to the day, about this same topic. But what I kind of didn't realize is that I sort of assumed that everybody here knew this story about the prodigal son, because I grew up in a family that was very religious, and we went to church every weekend, and I even went to a private school for a few years when I was really young, and I kept hearing this story, and they had like an animated series that they would watch like over and over and over again. So I heard this so many times that I'm like know the story like the back of my hand, but I assume everybody else knows about it too. But when I came here to give the talk that I gave, I found out that like actually in the audience there wasn't anybody that actually knew the story, because you were out of town that weekend. I remember that. So I don't want to speak for everybody here tonight. So is anybody here tonight that's not aware of the story, the prodigal son, that wants to admit it? All right, excellent. So this is all for you then. Awesome. All right. So hopefully the ones that have heard it before, it's a story that's worth revisiting, and I'll tell you why. Every time that Jesus told stories, they always had a lot of hidden meanings like deep down inside of them. So there's always like something new. We kind of revisit it and take the context of the lives that we have and where we're at in our life at this point, and we can kind of always like get something new out of it. So I hope we'll all approach this with an open mind, and let's see what happens. So the first thing I want to talk about is the word prodigal. I didn't know what that really meant. I kind of had the idea that he was like a prodigy, and it's not like that. It's not like he was gifted or exceptional or anything. This word prodigal just means wasteful. Spending money or resources freely and recklessly, extravagant, wasteful, being lavish. So that's the idea. This son is prodigal. He's wasteful. He's not like a gifted or a prodigy or like extra special or anything like that. So let's get into it, I guess. Let's tell the story. So this comes from the Bible, from Luke 15, chapter 15, verse 11 to 32. And this is one of those stories that Jesus told. He told a lot of stories. That's a good way to kind of like reach people, as you tell a story and they're like, it kind of gets, so a lot of the stuff he told was in stories. So this story, there's a man, he's like a landowner, so he's a wealthy man, and he has two sons, the older son and the younger son. So he's got these two sons. So the younger son, one day, he gets this bright idea. I'm going to paraphrase this. I'm going to say it in my own words, if that's okay. So he goes to his father and says, he says, Father, he knows that one day he's going to get this huge inheritance. The land will get split between him and his brother. So he says, Father, I want to have my share of the inheritance now, and I'll leave this place. So the father says, okay, and he divided up, the wealth, the resources, the property between the two sons. So the son got his share. Not long after that, the younger son, he took off, with everything he had, and he set off for a distant country. So you can see that look of hope as he's, it's like, this is a new place I'm going to. So he set off. He took his money and he went off. And so what does a young rich kid in a new land do? He makes all these friends. Right? And so it's always easy to find friends when you have a lot of money. So he finds all these friends, and they're very, very happy to help him spend all this money he's got. And so that's what he concerned himself with in this time, was he lived in a lavish life, and he spared no expense, and he took care of his friends along the way, and he he lived it up, as we could say. But as time went on, he spent everything he had, and all the money was gone. And then once the money was all gone, there went the friends too. It's like, oh, I used to think you were kind of cool, and I don't think you're really that cool anymore. So I'm out of here. I'm going to split. And at that point, there was a severe famine in the country, and so everybody began to be in need. So imagine that. Imagine you're in a famine or a drought, and the price of food, if the food is scarce, the price is going to go up. So him having no money, he couldn't afford the food, and he starts to be in need. He starts to be starving. So he found himself a job where he was hired out, actually feeding pigs. And he's out there feeding the pigs, and he's watching these pigs eating this food and like fattening themselves up. And he's getting jealous of the pigs, like in the food that they have, like the disgusting pig food that they eat. And he's like, man, I wish I could have some of that. Like, that's how hungry he is. He's starving. And he's out there, and he's like doing the work, and he's begging like people to help him. Like I'm still out here starving, but nobody's sharing anything with him. So he gets this idea, and he goes, like, things weren't really so bad on my father's farm. and he goes, even the servants there, they work, but they get treated well. They get to eat. They have a place to sleep. So he goes, what I think I'm going to do is go back to my father and just ask him if I can work as one of his servants. So he says, he rehearses. He got this speech he's going to give, like, Father, I've sinned against you, and I've sinned against heaven, and I'm no longer worthy to be called your son. So make me like one of your hired servants. Like, he's really been kind of put in his place. He's like in a low spot. So he's walking back to this farm, to his father's land, and his father sees him approaching, and his father runs out to meet him and gives him a huge hug. And he runs to his son, throws his arms around him, embraces him. The son says to the father, I have sinned against heaven and against you, and I am no longer worthy to be called your son. But the father says to his servants, bring the best robe and put it on him, put a ring on his finger and sandals on his feet. Bring the fattened calf and kill it. Let's have a feast and celebrate. For this son of mine was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So they began to celebrate. Okay, yeah. So this part is interesting. This is like the son is going back, and he's like sort of tucks his tail between his legs and goes back to his father, and he's like, I'm not even worthy of being called your son. And he's expecting the father to like really say like, yeah, you're right, like you messed up, But the father, he doesn't say any of that stuff. He's just glad that his son has come back. He's just like overjoyed, like, thank God you're okay. Thank God you're here now, like welcome back. And not only is he glad, like he's like, let's have a big party. Let's celebrate, that you're back here. Like let's like the joy that I'm feeling to have you back, I want everybody here to share that joy too. But there's one person who didn't feel the joy. And this is the older son. So the older son is out there in the field. And when he came near the house, he heard the dancing, he heard the music, and he says, like, you know, what's going on in there? And one of the servants tells him, like, oh, your brother has come back. And your father is so happy that he's back, that he's having this party, he's having this feast. So the older brother became angry, and he refused to go in. And he says, what did he do? Like, he wasted all that money, and now he comes back, and like, now we're supposed to celebrate? Like, what's up with this? You know? But the father goes out to meet him, and pleads with him, come on in, like, just forget about it, just come in and have a good time. But the boy said, like, look, all these years I've been slaving for you. I've done everything that you ever asked me to. I never disobeyed your orders. Like, I've been the good son, but you never gave me a party. You never threw me a feast. And, this other guy, he wastes all your money. He just gives it away, and he squanders everything. And then, and he lives this life where he's like living with like drunks and prostitutes, and like, it's like, you don't even want to talk about it. And this is the guy that you're throwing the party for? And he goes, aye. So the father says to him, you were always with me. Everything I have is yours. But we had to celebrate and be glad, because this brother of yours was dead and is alive again. He was lost and is found. So the brother finally says, okay, all right. He comes back in, and then we party like it's 99 BC. So this is actually, like, for me, this story really kind of hits close to home, because for me, I get embarrassed to talk about it, but it wasn't. I actually like went through a lot of stuff like this. I didn't like get the inheritance thing, but I did. Yeah, I'm still waiting for that.
You got the money.
Yeah, I didn't get the money, but what I had, I wasted. I had a very lavish youth. And I went and I lived in the world, and I tried all these worldly things, and I don't want to get into it if we're live on YouTube or anything, but but it's funny. It's funny to me that I grew up and I heard this story over and over and over and over again, and then like one day I realized, like, this is my story, and I'm that younger brother, and it's like, because I ran away from the plantation or whatever you want to call it for a long time, and it didn't occur to me until like later on. And it's funny because I didn't even realize like how much like it was going to keep like coming and slapping me in the face, because there was one time I went to see these like spiritual people that came up from Mexico, like before I found the Spiritist Center, and I went to see these people, and they were like, oh, like my friends were like, oh, you got to see them, they're really good, and I went to see them, and that's what the woman said to me, was like, do you know the story of the Prodigal Son? And like, oh, you should look into that, like, because whatever she was into, that's what popped in her head when she saw me, and then I had this experience before I found the Spiritist Center, that I was actually in Brazil, and I was like looking for spirituality. I was looking for this path, and I came to this place where I was like doing a lot of prayer and meditation, and I heard like this voice, and so I don't know if it's my voice or it's my idea or where it came from, but I heard something saying like, the prodigal son has returned, and I was like, ooh, it's like, what's going on here? So the story for me is like really, really personal, and so for that I'm kind of but what can we talk about? Like what have we learned from this story? So I want to ask you guys, if you want to participate a little, is what in this context of the story, what do you think the father represents? Conscience. That's a good one. That's actually a good, the obvious answer is the Father would be like God or the Creator. But, and really, that's kind of in one of my notes here is when we talk about things like divine laws, and obeying the divine laws. And Allan Kardec writes, where can we find these divine laws? Like, where are they? And the spirits told him they're written in our conscience. So that's true. You should be giving lectures, really. I'm only here because nobody else wants to do it. If there's better people out there, they're welcome to take my place. So what about this younger son? I know who the younger son represents to me, but what about to you guys? What do you think the younger son would represent, this prodigal son? All of us? Even in the context of Spiritism, I want to say, like, we talk about how, like, where did we come from? Where, as far as humanity or spirits, like, where did we come from? And all of us, in a way, have sort of left our Father's house, and are, and we're looking for love in all the wrong places, or looking for, looking for happiness, and trying to fill the void we feel inside with material things, with whatever it is. It could be drinking. Some of us work excessively. It's always like something excessive, Netflix, excessive, retail therapy, all these things. And we try to, like, my friends used to say, I have a God-sized hole in my heart. We're always trying to, like, fill this hole, and what it is it's God that we're looking for. And that's why, like, the young son, like, a lot of us can, like, easily kind of say, like, oh, the younger son is maybe somebody with an addiction or something, or maybe represents one of us. But we can kind of look at it like all of humanity, that in a way we've sort of lost our way. And eventually, hopefully, we get that idea that, okay, now it's time for us to find our way back again. What about the older brother? Who do you think the older brother represents? Or what do you think the older brother represents?
I think the younger brother is like trial and error, and the older brother is just accepting, but without knowing why he's doing what he's doing. The other one went outside and tried it and failed. He comes back and he learned something from it. The older one, did he learn anything from his experience?
Mr. Play It Safe. Yeah.
The other one had experience.
Yeah. I think in a way, I don't want to put words in anybody else's mouth. I think in a way, like I said, many of us could identify with the younger brother. I think a lot of us, if we were really, really honest, could identify with the older brother too. Being judgmental, being jealous, envious, feeling like we deserve more than we're given, feeling like we should be, put on a pedestal, treated better, and looking down at other people. But I can only speak for me. I can't speak for you guys. I can only say. But that's what I thought about the older brother, because the older brother, when I used to hear the story a lot, we always talk about the prodigal son, and we get to that part, and then like the end of the story where it's like the older brother gets jealous and it's like they kind of like skip over that, like when I was a kid in the cartoon that they showed us, like it was there but it wasn't like prominent, like the most of the screen time was on the son like drinking and, and partying and stuff, and that was like the most interesting thing. And then and then coming back to the father, but then the older brother, and I think the older brother is really something that we need to pay more attention to, because that's almost like okay, for a lot of us, we're here, we might be at the Spiritist Center, or we might be doing some type of practice or something like that, or we're we're sort of like on our path towards spirituality, or like trying to become better people. It could be something like really simple. It doesn't necessarily have to be one practice or another. It's kind of like a wheel where all the spokes lead to the center. So whatever path we're on, but then sometimes like people enter the path later than us, and then we like look down like, oh, well, you should. I had a friend that he was dating this girl, and she said to him one time, she was like, man, I wish I was as peaceful and serene as you are, because you're just so peaceful and so serene. And he looked at her and said, if you want what I have, you got to do what I do. And it didn't go well for him after that. I don't want to tell you, I don't want to spoil it, but yeah, it wasn't like, she didn't take it very well when he said that. And it's like, a lot of us, we have that, and he used to tell me that story just to like kind of prove the point. It's like, yeah, you might like be doing something good for yourself, and you're starting to feel pretty good about like you're moving in a positive direction, but like don't forget like where you came from, and that we really got to reach the hand out for the other people too, and to also like to share in other people's joy. I mean, how many of us forget that when I don't even scroll through Instagram anymore. Like, I'm friends with some of you guys, and like I can't even do it because you guys are like always doing like stuff on the weekends and going to the beach and like showing off your gardens and stuff and like doing yoga or whatever you guys are doing, and I'm just like, oh, you people, like I don't want to see this, like. But I know like we're supposed to be happy, like. If I'm in a good state of mind, I'll look at it and be like, oh, like I'm so glad, like she had her baby, or she, or whatever. Sometimes you can feel that joy, and you can feel that you share that with them. If you're in the right state of mind when you're looking at stuff, like, oh, I'm so glad, that they had a nice sushi dinner and they had to, share it with us. Like it's really great garnishing. But there's sometimes when I'm just like, I'm looking at like, who cares if you're on a boat? Like I don't even like boats. Like when it's like just swipe. So.
We always want to wish what the other have because we don't have sometimes they. When I'm in the beach, it's like we're afraid that people will become like they're challenging to us.
I don't even post something on Instagram unless I think it's going to make other people jealous. That's why I don't post a lot. Yeah. I'm like, oh, this might make somebody like. Let me just take a selfie of this. Like whatever it takes. But that's why I wanted to ask you guys like. No, this is not a question that I want you to answer back to me, but I just want you to sort of ask yourself, like, which character are you? Which? Yeah. I hope you're not going to say the father. Because hopefully, some of us might say that too. Might think that we're the one in control and that we're the one. But each of us has these characters as a part of us. And, I thought about, like, where does this tie into, like, some of our tenets in Spiritism? And we have some of these things, like, I didn't make many more slides, I don't know, it's a long story, but, but, a lot of times we come here, we talk about the orders of spirits, and there's like 10 different classes of spirits, starting from where we came from. We were created, and this is the idea of Spiritism, is that as human beings, we were created, as spirits, created simple and ignorant. So we weren't created perfect, like that idea that we were perfect and then we lost our way, and this story kind of has that, like that. This is one of those stories where they, in religion, that they can point to and say like, oh, look, he was created perfect, he lost his way. But like, no, he had that inside of him. He had that motivation that he wanted to go and he wanted to like, see what the world was like. and then he realized like the world's not that good. Like I was doing pretty good when I was in my father's house, so I'm gonna go back. But we have these different like orders of spirits, starting from, you know, the simple and ignorant and going up to, you know, my favorite category is the frivolous spirits and the boisterous spirits. Those are the ones I identify with the most. But, you know, as we move up, like as the spirit becomes more and more, you know, purified and less attached to material things, you know, we actually get to those orders of spirits that are like benevolent spirits and good spirits. And, you know, I don't know all the categories, like exactly how they're called, but you get the idea that like it gets better. But here on Earth, in this planet, like we're surrounded mostly with like the lower order, and we have to like realize like we're in that category too, and that we need to do the work to work our way up. And this is a great story. Like even though like the older brother is kind of doing better, you know, a little bit better, he still has those feelings, those jealousies and anger and everything. Like it's still a part of him, and he's still working on it, you know. But he can come to the party too, you know. And that's what I was going to talk about too, is with the divine laws, the roadmap. It's actually like written inside of us. I'm not sure where it is. Like I'm still trying to find it. It's supposed to be in there. That's one of the reasons I came to Spiritism. You know, I was practicing a lot of different things, spirituality. I was going to all these different groups and meetings and stuff, and I could really admit, like just for me, that I have a hard time knowing what's right and what's wrong. You know, and I felt like okay, I would meet a new group of friends and meet them and I'd say, oh, they're into some interesting things and they do these, you know, like spiritual people and stuff, and then I would realize like, oh man, they're really like into gossiping. Like that's all they do is gossip. And I said, I want to like be a person who doesn't gossip someday. So like, you know, and I came to the Spiritist Center and I read the literature that like how dangerous and poisonous gossip is, like for you if you're the gossiper, and for the other person that's, you know, it's just not good for anybody, you know. So I'm like, okay, and I can't say like I've been cleansed of gossiping. You know, but at least I know how bad it is. Like I had a feeling it was bad before. And that's why I say, like, that feeling was in me that, like, I think I can do better, and I want to be surrounded with people, you know, that want to be moving in that direction to be better, you know. And I came to the Spiritist Center, and I found a couple people that are that are trying to be better. No, it's a good place. You know, and other. Also in my notes, I said the older brother, you know, when we talk about that older brother in the story, like how many of us really have something in common. There's an old movie where the guy says, don't be that guy, you know, don't be that guy who's jealous and is like unhappy when other people move up. Even in the Spiritist Center, you know, we have you know, certain people like sort of at certain times get the spotlight. You know, you have people sometimes on stage giving talks, or somebody is like in charge of a meeting or something, or somebody and sometimes, like I've seen, sometimes people get a little jealous, like, oh, who's that person think they are? It's like, you know, and sometimes like little jealousies will sort of pop up, like in any group, and you know, even outside the Spiritist Center or whatever, like teaching classes or whatever. Like anytime that somebody gets like a little bit of attention, you know, there's always people that are going to be jealous around them. But like we really have to work on it, and we have to, you know, if you get that opportunity to give a talk or to like lead a group or to give to offer a prayer at the beginning or the end of a lecture, it's a big responsibility, and it's a great opportunity to sort of like put yourself in that position where you can work and make sure you have the right motivation, and make sure like my motivation for something even as simple like giving a prayer, that I have the proper motivation, that I'm not like trying to be proud or like we were talking about it the other day, like somebody told me like I prayed one time for 8 minutes. And I was like, it was like, just forget about it, like let it go, like it's like you should let it go. And I don't know. we got to make sure our heart is in the right place. And another thing that like sort of popped up as I was thinking about this, when we talk about the older brother and the way he sort of feels towards the younger brother, is we have that story, another story Jesus told, the workers of the last hour. And that's one that really pops up for me, like actually when I'm at work. It's not something, like it's supposed to be an analogy, but I actually like use it when I'm at work and get those feelings, because in the workers of the last hour, there were some workers that started at dawn working, to do the harvest, and the other workers started like at midday, and some started at the end of the day. But when it came time, like when it was nighttime and the harvest was like finished, they're finished doing the harvest, they all got paid the same amount. And so the people who were working all day were like, shouldn't we get more than the people that only, just got here? And this is like, the idea is like, well, you came to work and you agreed like to get paid this amount, and that's a fair amount to get paid for the amount of work you did. Like, don't be jealous just because I was generous towards the other workers. And that really has a lot to do with that older brother is like, I've been here the whole time and I've been like doing well and I've been doing good, and like, it's like, oh, like what if I wasn't get rewarded for doing good, would I have done bad things? Like where are you really going with that? And I think about that a lot at work, when I'm at work, because people at work, I don't know about your jobs, but at my jobs, people are always talking about like, oh, that guy makes too much money. He shouldn't be getting paid for what he doesn't work hard enough, and and I'm just like, like I made an arrangement with my boss that this is like what I'm gonna do, and we made that agreement. So I shouldn't be even worry about like what anybody else is doing. Like I'm just gonna keep doing what I'm doing because it feels right for me. And another thing that sort of popped up was this idea, that there's a saying, like Jesus said, ask and it will be given to you, seek and you will find, and knock and the door will be open to you. And so you have to look at this like with this seek and you will find, like what is it that we're seeking? And that younger son in the Prodigal Son was seeking like that lifestyle. I don't want to like harp on Instagram too much, but it's like if you watch like things like YouTube and Instagram and see people and what people are sort of promoting, like these days, people are all really trying to like sell this idea that they have this lifestyle, that they can go anywhere and do anything they want, and I can work 3 hours a week and I can flip properties, or I'm doing, and I'm an entrepreneur and I can work from the beach and like and this is like this lifestyle that people are really like trying to sell, and it's like a total illusion when you see like the actual amount of work that people go through to do what they do, or that they might actually be accumulating debt or like just not living sustainable lifestyle. And so sometimes like when I'm at work and I'm outside and I'm like sweating and I'm doing like this physical labor I have to do, I'm like, man, I wish I was like one of those guys on Instagram, like, on the beach, like, with my laptop and, or sitting in a Starbucks somewhere, like making money somehow. I don't know how that works. I haven't figured it out, but I was like, this really isn't so bad. Like the work I'm doing, the things I'm doing, I'm like actually pretty happy, like where I'm at. If I had to change what I was doing, like what I'm doing right now, like I really wouldn't be happy, So it's one of those things, just sort of like that younger son, like went out, like looking for that happiness that he had heard so much about, like, oh, come out, it's gonna be great, we're gonna be out drinking, we're gonna be out doing that, and it's like you get the reward of what you're seeking. Like you get the hangover, you get, you wake up and you don't know where you're at and how you got there, and or whatever, whatever you do. There was a speaker here talking a couple months ago, and he was talking about, he says, like, you seek and you will find. And he said, like, he was talking about his wife, and he was like, she gets up every morning and she exercises and she does like her Zumba or whatever, and she looks ridiculous But at her age, and she's like looks like she's still in her 20s, and he's like she's getting the reward of the work that she's doing. Like she's like getting the recompense, the payment for the work, and that really stayed with me, that idea. Like, and whatever it is that you're seeking, and some of us do it in sort of a unconscious kind of a way, that we're not always even aware of what it is that we're seeking. If we have to kind of like take a step back sometimes and say, like, how am I spending my time, and like, what is it that I really want, and what am I actually doing to get it? But am I actually working towards what I want, or am I working towards like not getting what I want? Like I do it a lot too. I have big plans. Like sometimes Friday night, I'm like, I make lists of like, this is all the work I'm gonna do, like all these things I'm gonna get finished this weekend. And then by the time it's like Sunday night, I'm looking at that list and I'm like, I haven't checked anything off. And all I did was like watch YouTube the whole weekend, and and I don't know where the time went. But I think it's gonna pay off one of these days. I don't know. You'll see about that. So the last thing I sort of added here was what happened was 3 years ago when I gave this talk about the prodigal son, and I assumed that everybody had heard about it and everybody knew the story, and it turned out like a lot of the people didn't know the story, was what I was actually talking about was the sequel to the Prodigal Son Part 2. So that's why the lecture was a little bit backwards, because I was like talking about, my question was, what do you think happened like later, after the son got home and he's living with the father, like the day after the party, and he wakes up and he's like, okay, now what do I do now? What do you think happened then? And I actually gave a whole thing. I actually had a 3-act narrative and everything about it, so I didn't bring that tonight. But it's a good question, because that's kind of actually, it popped up for me when I was in Brazil the first time, and I was like with this lady, and she was sort of like my guide there. I actually asked her, I was like, what do you think the prodigal son did, like, after he came back, I'm like, do you think he ever got in a fight afterwards? Or like, things got like tension between him and his brother later on, or, she's like, no, he lived with his father and that's it. Like, and I was like, no, I don't buy it. Like, it's just, there's never like a happy walk into the sunset ending. Like, life goes on and the struggles continue. And I'm telling you, because if I'm the prodigal son and I came back home, if that's my story, like my story didn't end there. I've had like other struggles. I'm really glad that like I came back onto the path and that I'm like moving in a good direction. But like the struggles have actually gotten like more difficult. Like the path gets narrower, and it's like, because sometimes it's like certain things are easy to let go of, and every day we have to like let go of more things. That's from the Tao Te Ching. I like to seem like I know stuff. That's an ancient Chinese book of wisdom. They say in search of the Tao, in search of the way, every day we let something go. So we gotta let something go every day. And so it's kind of easy, like when you first like take a deep breath and you're like, okay, here's something I let go of. And like they say, it's like low-hanging fruit. Like, oh, I can like let go of this anger and this resentment, like the easy stuff. But then it gets like harder to reach the stuff that like we're kind of holding on to a little bit more, and like, oh, I'm not really ready to let go of this yet. Like this one, some of that deep-rooted resentment. And that's kind of where we have to go with it. And those things come up, as we're going along. So that's kind of what I had to say about the sequel to The Prodigal Son. Is sometimes it gets a little rough. And sometimes, even though the father forgave the son still kind of like has some clashes with the father, especially when they talk about politics. Like, just forget about it. Just don't do it. But I had to go through that, because I had to get to a point where I realized, like, my dad and I are not going to agree on politics, but like at one point over the last summer, I didn't even like want to talk to him for 2 weeks, then I had to say, like, I love my dad. Like, I want my relationship with my dad, like, more than I want to fight about politics. so I don't know if that has to do with the prodigal son. Yeah, I'm just like, I just try not to talk about it. Like, let's talk about other things. And I don't know. I'm glad to say I'm lucky that I can actually, like, have a sort of a concrete, analogy to this story, the prodigal son, like with my own life. Because in a way, like some people don't go through that. Some people don't get to like see that or experience that. And for me, it's like it's something real and tangible that I can like point to and say, okay, I did this and this is what happened, and that's why why I'm here today, and I'm glad to be here. And there's no place I'd rather be. And, it's like I'm doing this because this is what I want to do. And, I came into the center almost 6 years ago now and drank the Kool-Aid and,
It's
just good stuff. Yeah, I don't know. So I thank you guys so much for listening to my talk. So we can all ride off into the sunset. Right? I don't know. So, does anybody have any questions or comments? Or I took it off of Google.
Instagram.
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's gross.
I mean, yeah. Whoever.
Yeah, I thought it was corn.
Shame on you, Stephen, using Google Pictures.
I know.
Who's got time for that?
When you can use your own picture.
Where am I going to find a field of roses in a sunset?
I thought it was a field of corn. Now I see the roses.
Yeah, I mean, I could take some drone shots, but they won't really fit in the. It's not so good. But
I'm sure you have good pictures.
But thank you guys. It was like I didn't feel like I was prepared for this talk, but I sort of felt like I could probably come up here and wing it and make it work. So I hope it worked for you guys. All right. Stay tuned for the announcements.